Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, joined by fellow Lifetime Longhorn, the young prodigy C.J. Vogel, and the estimable Jerry Hamilton for your Sunday night live stream. Thank you guys for joining us. You know how Sunday works. Well, really how any day works. It's all about you. You guys hit us up with as many questions, comments, and we'll address as many and answer as many of them as we can. Super Chats jump to the front of the line. You can interrupt the show at any time. The Longhorns are ranked number 3 in the latest poll. We'll get to that. Also, college football playoff poll coming up later this week. We can discuss that coming up as well. Also discuss Texas' big win over the Florida Gators and their upcoming matchup with the Arkansas Razorbacks, one of their most hated rivals and a rekindling of their conference rival now that they are in the SEC. So we can get to that. We've got some recruiting updates. We'll get to my man Jerry Hamilton here in a second. So all things Texas football we can discuss. Shout out to my man CB. Thank you very much, CB. Congratulations to the Texas soccer team. They are the first Texas team to win an SEC title. The first Texas sports program to win an SEC title. They are SEC champions. So well done. Well done, ladies. Well done, ladies. Great job there. Appreciate you, CB, for keeping us on track. Thank you guys for joining us wherever you are. It doesn't matter where you are. We appreciate you guys helping us build this On Texas football family. All right, gentlemen. Before we get into kind of what's upcoming for Texas and what has happened and transpired since their win over Florida, let's talk about what we saw versus Florida for a little bit and review that before we move on. I'll open up the floor to you, Jerry. You first. What were your thoughts? I'm sure by now you've got a chance to rewatch and process and digest the Texas-Florida game. What were your thoughts on what you saw?
Yeah, so look, I thought Texas handled their business, right? I mean, we talked about it going in that Florida was a banged-up team. Their top 3 corners were out. Their top 2 wideouts were out. Their top 2 quarterbacks were out. Ended up their best offensive guard was out. But, look, you have to go in. And Florida's a talented team. That's playing a tough schedule and got a tough schedule in front of them. It's had some really tough injury luck this year and was starting to play relatively well before the quarterback injury set in for them and the rest of the corner injury set in for them. But look, Texas went out and handled their business. I mean, we wanted one thing we asked for going into the game was a clean first quarter. Defense, we got your back this time. You've had our back for the last 3 weeks. We got your back this weekend. I thought the first drive was tremendous until Wisner kind of went backwards. Can't do that in the SEC on a run. Tried to reverse field. Got blown up. Had the sack. Ended up missing a 51-yard field goal, right? After that, Texas played really – they executed well on offense in the passing game, right? In the passing game, they executed really well. Run game, it took a while to get going. I think 6 carries for 7 yards at one point. Defensively, I thought Texas defense did what they do. They had one bust in the game, which you're playing against good athletes and good players. Somebody's going to make a play against you. You had one bust, young corner. CJ mentioned that. It was a young corner. Outside of that one bust, look, they ran the ball pretty effectively, but some of that was when the game was over and Texas was content to just say, all right, you just want to run it. Let's just run the clock and get out of here, man. So Texas wasn't pressing that issue necessarily. My key is I thought Texas overall was an A game for Texas as a team as a whole. That doesn't mean each player, each position was in my eyes, but I thought the team effort overall was an A. They handled business. They blew out the University of Florida. They had their fans with hands and head midway through the game at the end of the first half. That's always a good game. That's always great in the SEC because there aren't many of those. And now, Rod, CJ, my biggest question coming out of this game is what can Arkansas, with their backs, adding a QB mobile run game, do like Florida did similarly on offense, but with a more healthy team and quarterback and wide receivers? That's my question going into that game. I don't think Arkansas's offensive line is as good as Florida's is running the football. Their right tackle is going to have real issues with Colin Simmons, by the way. I rewatched the Ole Miss game, and I don't want to say the guy was a turnstile because Ole Miss is really talented. That guy's going to have issues against Texas. But what can Arkansas's offense replicate with added QB run game that Florida did and was successful? Because they have big backs. They got – and Quentin Jackson will play this week. He'll be healthy. He was there. Sam Pittman's been loading up for this game, right? So, guys, it'll be interesting to see what Arkansas can replicate. But Arkansas defensively I think they're going to have issues with Texas.
Yep. CJ, your thoughts, takeaways from the Texas win over Florida, obviously, but we're looking ahead as well. What are your thoughts on what you saw this weekend?
Yeah, well, first off, UT boy, good to see you back in the chat. We missed you a little bit, but good to see you back. I know that Texas finding some momentum on the field. We're finding some momentum here in the chat. But to my takeaways, and how could you not start with the vertical passing game? And you could talk about Quinn. You know, there's one turnover-worthy play that probably should have been picked off early in that game. You could also attribute 2 or 3 passes that should have been caught about 30 or 40 yards down the field. So the give or take is there. My big thing is you complete several passes down the field for explosive plays. That's encouraging. And when that happens, the underneath is so much more open as a result of defensive backs and safeties having to drop and respect 20 to 30-yard routes, whereas normally they might have their eyes on the quarterback and would be jumping the intermediate, right? And I think that was what was happening a little bit when Trey Wisner caught that screen pass and went 52, 51 yards to the house. You know, you sit back there, you roll out, the defense has to roll with, and you leave a guy wide open, and he's able to make a play after the catch. That's encouraging, right? Everything is open now with the deep pass. Now, how do you replicate that? I think that's encouraging and something that Texas has to work on. But the big thing to me is having Isaiah Bond, a healthy Isaiah Bond, back in this offense. That opens up a lot. And I know it wasn't Bond that was making these big explosive plays, but when he's on the field, you have to account for the speed. You have to know where Seven's at on the field at all times. That's the guy in practice that defenses are sitting there saying, all right, we got a scout team, Rod. You know where number 7's going at all time in practice. Keep an eye on him because that's the guy that they love to throw the rock to. And that opens it up for DeAndre Moore, Ryan Wingo, Silas Bowl, and Matthew Golden. And that's so important for Texas and Quinn Ewers, who I thought played a pretty solid game on Saturday. And against Arkansas moving forward, listen, that's a bad secondary. It is. It's right there with Florida, right? Not as dinged up, but certainly less talented when 100%. And Ole Miss went in firsthand. 515 passing yards from Jackson Dart, 6 touchdowns. That's the kind of downfield approach and attack I would hope that the Texas Longhorns are able to carry over from this weekend. It wasn't a perfect day for Quinn Ewers, but it was enough. And I think that's what you need from this Texas offense. Just the threat of a vertical passing attack, because Gunnar Helm, their running backs, are always going to be a big part of this offense, and they're not going to go in anytime soon. And that's certainly – we saw that on display this past Saturday as well.
Yeah, the expectations are so high for Quinn. Because I'm with you. I thought he was great actually throwing the vertical pass. I mean, he was, according to Pro Football Focus, what he had 5 passes of 20 yards or more, and he completed 2 of them, and held 2 of them were dropped.
Right.
By DeAndre Moore or bobble. No, drop.
Rod, it was his second best passing day, 20 yards down the field by Pro Football Focus of his Texas career.
I agree. Yes, great point. Yeah, it tracks, CJ. That did. Like I said, if DeAndre Moore doesn't bobble and drop those, he's 4 or 5. Essentially on passes 20 yards or more down the field and ends up with 3 touchdowns.
His halftime stats are probably 350 and 5 scores. Yep. I'm sitting there thinking, all right, that's pretty darn good, you know.
And I'll give Sark credit because I think Sark dialed them up. I think they were schemed open a little bit of them because they were double move. DeAndre Morris was double moves. 2 of his. Those were double moves. That's usually first read, kind of wide window stuff. The golden first touchdown was that stalk block and go that he's teams have not figured it out yet. They faked the swing screen, and then the slot receiver Wingo is scored on it. I think Moore's got an explosive play on it, and then Golden ended up scoring on it too on a touchdown. So I just thought Sark was dialed in. I thought it was a brilliant game plan. I thought Quinn actually had one of his best days too. So the expectations are so high for Quinn. I agree. People were like, well, he wasn't totally on. I'm like, man, he set a career high in passing touchdowns, and we still didn't want to give Quinn his flowers totally because the expectation is that he should have hit on some of those deeper throws. I thought Quinn has bounced back honestly, in my opinion, in a magnificent way. I think if he keeps playing like this, Texas has a chance to win it all. I'm not trying to jinx it, but this is what I saw on Saturday was glimpses of pre-injury Quinn, which was in the conversation to be the first quarterback taken off the board. I'm not saying he's going to be that. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying when he's playing that well, he's in that conversation. Still missed a couple of throws, missed a deep one on DeAndre Moore on the skinny post, missed Isaiah Bond on a target to motion that probably could have been a touchdown early on in the game, which also was a target to motion. So I get that, but I do think he's trending now toward being the best version of Quinn so far this season.
And with that, I think that a lot of praise for the offensive performance needs to go to the offensive line, because Florida, again, they have a talented front seven, but it's not one that you're going to see in the college football playoff or the SEC championship game.
No.
With that said, that offensive line gave him time. They gave him a clean pocket. And I know Jerry's been able to say it this weekend and after the game, you know, when you give Quinn an open pocket and you give him time to throw the football, he's a really good quarterback. But what can he do with the dirty pocket? That still remains a question, and it's a fair critique.
Yep.
Now,
agreed.
If this offensive line is able to sit back and find ways to give him protection, then you're looking at a pretty good Quinn Ewers, right? And there was that one bust in protection with DJ Campbell and Cam Williams getting beaten on a stunt and twist, and Quinn goes down pretty quickly on a sack. But the point being, if that offensive line can duplicate what we saw Saturday, and they're going to need to perform well because better front sevens, better edge rushers are ahead. Landon Jackson, one of them. It's going to be important to see what they can do because, again, with Quinn having a clean pocket, when he's not blitzed or pressured, he's as good throwing the football in the pocket as anybody you'll find in the country. It's when he's pressured that you got to sit back and find different ways for that ball to move.
And I'll say this. So Arkansas is Landon Jackson. He only has 3.5 sacks this year, but they're outside of that very similar to Florida's front. So, again, I'm not sure if you handle Landon Jackson, I'm not sure it's a front that can apply that type of pressure to the Texas pass protection and the Quinn in the pocket, which is a good thing, especially on the road. Because look, that if you watch Arkansas against Ole Miss, they played a 3 high, and Jackson Dart had all day to throw, and they crushed Arkansas with tight end over the middle. Now, the backup tight end had 9 for 102 touchdowns in that game. They played that game, by the way, the people that watched the Arkansas-Ole Miss game, they played that without Trey Harris. Trey Harris didn't even play against Georgia, by the way, an all-SEC receiver. And pre-scoring, the NFL tight end did not play against Arkansas. I mean, they did that against Arkansas without their probably 2 of their top 3 pass catchers. But Arkansas, if you handle Landon Jackson, they're going to look very similar to Florida up front. And that's a very good thing. And here's where they're also similar to Florida. Linebackers aren't great in coverage. Linebackers can be had for Arkansas. So if you give, and I'll add to this the Quinn piece of it, if you give Sark time for his scheme to develop and his plays to develop, Rod, that's when Texas is really dangerous.
Yeah, and you've got to have great instinctual players too.
Yeah.
Sark, he wants to test your eye discipline, a lot of misdirection. So your feel of the game as a player, your film study, that all plays a huge role when you play Sark, man. I agree with you on that. It's a good time. A good point about his plays that you give it time to develop. You almost have to just try to create chaos and blow it up. And you got to have D linemen that can go blow it up initially before his plays have time to actually develop. All right, we'll get to some of your questions. I know you guys got a ton of questions there. We appreciate you guys. All right, before we get into questions, Jerry, I know you had some nuggets, some recruiting nuggets about some of the official visitors over the weekend for Texas at that Florida game.
There was two official visitors. Grayson Littleton, the top 150 prospect in the country, the corner out of Wiregrass Ranch, out of Wesley Chapel, northeast of Tampa. I was at his school last Monday. I heard the visit went tremendous. I think it was Texas or Michigan, barring a change, unless he adds a visit late. He doesn't seem like he is, though. From anybody when I talked to him before the visit, and then what I've heard post visit from the Littleton camp. But I think Texas had a great visit. Well, a couple of nuggets from that, and I posted them on TexasFootball.com. There's more over there, but there was a number of commitments there. That group of commitments was Elijah Barnes, Jamie French. Jamie French, I'll get to in a second why that is important to Grayson Littleton. Khalil Lockett, Devin Coleman, Jonah Williams, Ricky Stewart, a couple others. But all those guys, they hung out with them and their parents. What parents came down, made the trips, hung out with Grayson Littleton and Kellen Wiley, the 4-star linebacker out of Seffner Armwood, right there northeast of Tampa as well. It was Sunshine State weekend to watch Texas pound the Sunshine State. But both those guys had really good visits. Miami was the clear favorite for the Wiley, the linebacker, headed into the visit. I think Texas has put themselves in a position to be in the hunt. He visits Miami on the 23rd, so we'll see and what happens there with that one. Miami's been on him a while, but I do think they had a really good visit to Texas. Now, Grayson Littleton, he plays with the 7-on-7 and football program called California Power. Why that's important? So does Myron Charles, Javian Hilson, and a couple other guys Texas have been recruiting. So Grayson Littleton had been on campus before. Wiley had not. But Littleton was on campus with his stepfather, his mom, and brother. And they spent a lot of time with family members of Texas commitments. After that Saturday night as well, those two players spent time with the Texas recruits and players. Like Kellen Wiley spent a lot of time with Elijah Barnes, David Benda, Maurice Blackwell. Grayson Littleton spent a lot of time. Obviously, he's getting to know Jamie French. I'm going to get to that last, but he spent a lot of time with Jonah Williams and Texas DBs there. But the French Littleton connection that I think is something to mention, worthy of mention. They're both represented by Rosenhaus Sports for their NIL management. Make of that what you will.
Interesting. Good nugget there, Jerry. Appreciate that.
And that Rosenhaus Sports with Littleton happened after he was committed to Clemson. And now he's no longer committed to Clemson.
Interesting.
Yeah. Nice nugget there. That's why fans stay tuned here on Texas football. Super chats real quickly before we move on, because you know how that works. Super chats can interrupt the show at any time. Corey, thank you very much for your super chat. We appreciate it. Says here, CJ, you going to be on Dixon Street next Saturday night? If so, I'll buy you a drink. Hope to see some of y'all in Fayetteville. Yeah, that's right. What are your thoughts, CJ? You gonna be out in the town?
We'll see. It's a business trip. Let's first and foremost, we're there for business. We're there for work, but Dixon is very fun, Corey. So if things go well, 11 a.m. and about 3:30 p.m. after that game up on Saturday, I'll see you out there on Dixon Street.
All right. Yeah. Make sure you got you with Longhorn faithful. Be around the confines of Longhorn fans, because you don't want to be caught around a lot of Arkansas fans out there in Fayetteville. Justin here says, thank you for the super chat, by the way, guys. Thank you, Justin, for the super chat. Says Jerry and CJ, signing day is 20-ish days away. Any idea of a realistic number of recruits Texas can add in this short span? CJ, throw it to you first. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Texas sits with 22 in the class now that Zaylus Hicks is committed in the 25 class after reclassifying. So you look at what's available. There's a linebacker, a cornerback. You mentioned Grayson Littleton, Jerry, a few defensive linemen in the mix. Now, the big question is, you got Michael Terry available as well. How many can Texas add, and how many are they in a position to add? I think 27's kind of been that number that we've been kind of sitting on for quite some time now. Right now, with the pieces available, with the spots that Texas is looking at to kind of fill out this class and some of that roster availability, 27 feels likely. 26 in that same kind of conversation as well.
Yeah, 26 to 28. If they fill their needs at defensive line, it'll be 26 to 28. Because, look, athlete Michael Terry would be 23. A corner would be 24. If you get the third linebacker, 25, 2 DLs, 27, and you're sitting there at 27 right there. So and what if a Fasusi calls Flood and said, man, I've thought about it a long time, dude, I need to get out of OU. Well, then you jump to 28. So something like that would have to happen. But I think 26 to 28 is your number.
All right, just up there. Thank you for the super chat, Justin. We appreciate it. Before we move on, got some more questions. Of course, we'll answer those. But let's thank our sponsor for tonight's live stream, our good friends over at Rogue Shop, rogueshop.com. We really appreciate them for being part of the On Texas football family. Rogue Shop is bringing real plant medicine back to its roots. Make sure you use the promo code On Texas, and you'll get a very special discount from our very special friends over at rogueshop.com. That's right, folks. We're bringing real plant medicine back to its roots. They also ship nationwide. You can get their fantastic products anywhere in the country. Make sure you use the promo code On Texas for that very special discount. They have it all, from oils and creams to flour and gummies. Again, that's rogueshop.com, rogueshop.com. Use that code On Texas and you'll get a very special discount. So thank you very much to rogueshop.com for sponsoring our Sunday night live stream. Really appreciate them for being part of the On Texas football family. All right, getting back to the questions here. How about this is from Dirty Wizard 713, says, has the blueprint on how to beat Texas changed much after yesterday?
No.
I don't think so. First of all, I think the defense. Thank you, Dirty Wizard. We appreciate that. By the way, love the handle. I just don't think the Texas defense has a weakness, and I don't know when the last time I have been able to say that. Now you would say, well, they ran against them. Yeah, that's not a weakness. They had some success in the run game, but it was almost irrelevant. And it didn't really make a difference in the game because of the complementary football that Texas was able to play. So until it loses them a game, it's hard for me to say the defense has any real weakness right now because they're top 20 in every major statistical category and probably top 5 in most of them. And offensively, there are some deficiencies offensively, but they haven't been systemic and glaring. And that's what the Florida game was all about.
Right.
It was all about, okay, we've had 11 sacks in the last 2 games. What's the pass protection going to be like after a bye week versus Florida, who has good athletes on the front 7? The penalties, we can talk about that. What do you think that's an issue? But, the run game, there was some sparks in the run game versus Florida, and we were worried about whether the run game was going to be able to find its groove, essentially. So I thought in terms of getting its mojo back, the offense got its mojo back versus Florida. So I don't know if there is Georgia, of course, if you have Georgia's athletes and you got Kirby Smart's defensive mastermind, yes, but who's got that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really been, I think at the beginning of the year, I kind of circled 4 games where the offensive line had to play at a really high level. Michigan, Oklahoma, Georgia, and A&M. One of those is left. And I was talking pass protection because those teams all had defensive fronts that can get after you and disrupt some things and really bring pressure from many places against the Texas offense in the passing game with a pocket passer. Kentucky's got Deion Walker, but that's one guy, right? J.J. Weaver's pretty good off the edge. He's been banged up, though. Arkansas's Landon Jackson. Other than that, they're going to look like Florida defensively up front. Now, I'm not saying one guy's not a better player than some of the guys Florida had, but it's going to look similar. Linebackers aren't that level. Florida's linebackers weren't that level. Arkansas's linebackers aren't that level. I don't think A&M's linebackers are that level. York's a good player, but not the level Georgia has. But A&M's defensive front is. I mean, A&M's defensive front can absolutely ruin your day with pressure. So that's the 4th game out there for me. It was good to see the offensive line get a little bit more on track. I don't think they were really faced a team that could go get after them. But again, Arkansas maybe a little bit. Kentucky, we'll see if J.J. Weaver's healthy. But A&M's the one left with a defensive front with 5-6 future draft picks and guys who can get after the quarterback from every position on that defensive line. That's the one left. So that's just what I circled before the season. And I like what I saw from Texas offensive line yesterday, even though they weren't really pressed by great pass rushers. I still liked what I saw, other than DJ Campbell giving up the one on the twist early.
Talking about the offensive line, it's going to be interesting. How much run game can they generate? Because we're sitting there at halftime. It's 35-0. Quinn's looking tremendous. You got the wide receivers, tight ends, everybody's involved. And you look at the box score offensively, and you're like, ooh, 7 rush attempts from the running backs, and you got 13 total yards. It's not great. And I know that's not always been a big part of the Sarkisian offense early on in games, right, Rod? We've talked about it. How much do they like to air it out? Get Quinn in a rhythm. Get the quick extension throws of the run game, whatever you call it, the bubbles, the screens, the missiles. Just get the ball out quickly and let those guys work. That's early on. We see it every single week.
Every week.
At some point, you're going to have to run the football. And against a team like a Texas A&M, if you allow those edge rushers and guys that can get after the quarterback to know that every single snap is going to be a pass, it's going to backfire, right? You got to keep that honest at some point. Will Texas find some sort of rhythm against Arkansas or Kentucky? Listen, again, Deion Walker will give them a run for their money, but he's just one guy. What can you do when you got to find Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner? You got, Nick Scourton. I mean, that's going to be tough. And that's going to be the level that Texas has to succeed against before they go into the college football playoff, if they're able to make it, right? Right now, I'm expecting that they do. But that's the level of defenses that they're going to see from here on out. And these next 2 games are going to be really important for me to see what kind of success they can have in the run game, because I do think that they'll be able to protect Quinn. And again, going back to that, you give Quinn time, he'll put the ball where it needs to go.
Yep.
But what else can you do to play that complementary football within the offense? Because when you play complementary football with offense, the defense benefits, the whole team benefits. But offensively, building that run game is going to help this team find that mojo, that confidence moving forward again.
Hey, Rod, I wanted your thoughts on this because we talked about it with Rod and Bobby this morning. But the one thing I actually think I really believe Sark is doing something smart is not banging his head against the wall trying to run an inside zone 12, 15 times a game for 20 yards in the SEC. That's not what Trey Wisner and Jaden Blue are. That would literally be square peg, round hole, banging your head again into the brick wall for 7-8 games in a row. I know the fans may not like it. And I think I do think you get more holding calls on outside zone and wide zone. I think it's just natural when you think about it because your tackles are on the edges more. Your tight ends are out there exposed in space and more edges, where if you're coming more in the box downhill, you're going to get less holding calls. So I think that's the negative, but I still think, Rod, they're doing the right thing because I don't think the run game they had planned before the season with CJ Baxter is what they could execute now.
Right.
Yep. Sark understands that. Hey, go back to I throw this old adage out there all the time because a football coach told it to me. Football and life are constant struggles deciding between what you want to be and what you need to be in order to survive. And Sark understands what he needs to be right now is a pass-first offense. They can't run downhill on teams. They can't impose their will with the running game. They can't. CJ, you just brought up the numbers. And Sark understands that. That's why they had a close to 70% early down pass rate in the first half of that game. That has been the case when the offense has been clicking. All right. And I think that's the identity of the offense. They lead with the pass. The running game complements the passing game, and it comes, as CJ mentioned, later on in the game. Once the offense has really kind of set and dictated the tempo and the terms of the game for Sark. And that's done with the passing game. And that's why when Quinn is healthy, all right, Sark has the full complement of the playbook, even opening the offense up to the deep vertical passing game, because he just runs the offense through Quinn, which is what I thought the offense should be. That's the identity of the offense, guys, whether you like it or not.
Yep.
The offense kind of just runs through Quinn. And it's his accuracy and precision on the short intermediate throws that really allows what Jerry was talking about. Sark doesn't believe in a traditional run game, but guys, the run game is just Jaden Blue out on the edge and a short, quick dump.
And even Isaiah Bond on a perimeter pass, Rod. Like he's just like a running back after a catch.
Exactly. That's exact. Isaiah Bond, I believe, has 8, if I'm not mistaken, 8 receptions behind the line of scrimmage, 3 of them for touchdowns.
Yeah.
That's Sark's way of, extending the running game out to the wide receivers. And then he ending arounds. He should run one of those per game, by the way. He's averaging like 25 yards per end and around.
Yeah. So, hey, Rod, when you watch back the Bond run, how many players could have got the ball on that?
Man, he had 3. It was the third. He had 2 different fakes.
Right.
2 different fakes, and there were, it was that. I don't know if there's been, you guys think there's been a better play design by Sark since he's been here than that one? That was pretty sweet.
That was pretty
sweet.
Listen, it's plays like that, and it's like the Sarkisian screen, right? And we see the Sarkisian. I'm calling it that, but it's the play that Trey Wisner scored on. The PA waggle throwback to a tight end or a running back. We've seen that maybe once every game over the last 2 years. And, I look at it, the Oklahoma State Big 12 championship game, you have a big play off of that. It was successful against Alabama. You found a 50-yard touchdown this past weekend against Florida. I mean, it's little plays like that that he can go back to and find success with. And then you throw in a triple reverse fake, and you see Isaiah Bond get loose. It's awesome, and it's creative, and it's fun. But when it comes down to it, I like that Sarkisian doesn't just throw those in there to throw them in there, right? It's not to get cute. It's not to get, super over the top with it. When he needs to find 7 or 8 yards, hey, let's just throw the PA, the RPO, missile screen and let the playmakers make plays in space. We saw that again. Isaiah Bond again, the ball in his hands, whatever it is, you almost need to throw him 2 or 3 of those quick wide receiver screens a game because of what he can do with the rock in his hands. We saw it against UTSA with the 50-yard touchdown. We saw it again this past weekend, 30-yard touchdown. Just get the ball in the playmaker's hands. Don't be too creative, but when the moment's there and you have an opportunity to get creative, to find the mismatch and exploit a defensive scheme, do it. And that's exactly what he did this past weekend. I put it up on Texas Football this morning. One of my big takeaways was I thought that was one of the better called Sarkisian game plans that we've seen here at Texas. And listen, when you talk about it, finding rhythm and getting confidence back in your quarterback, you need that confidence, that cohesion from play caller to quarterback. And they found it on Saturday. And if that's encouraging at all, it should, again, continue against Arkansas with another depleted secondary.
Hey, Rod, what makes the best offensive coaches? It's guys that aren't hard-headed or so egotistical they end up square peg round hole. So you saw that twice yesterday with Sark against Florida and Kalen DeBoer against LSU. You know, in Kalen DeBoer's ideal world, he doesn't want to have QB run game as much as he does.
Mm-hmm.
Is he trying to square peg round hole Jalen Milroe and totally failing this season? Nope. Mm-hmm. He saw that LSU couldn't stop A&M when they brought Marcel Reed and said, well, I got big Michael Vick over here. See what you can do with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
Those are two guys that won in coaching yesterday.
Great point, Jerry. Yep, I guess 100% agree with you. KD35, I'm the best. Thank you for the super chat. We appreciate it. Says, I know it's early, but so far I'm more impressed with Kenny Baker's coaching and recruiting than when Bo Davis was here. Oh, Jerry, thoughts on this? That's a bold statement, KD35, I'm the best.
I think they're both tremendous football coaches, by the way. Bo's got a hell of a D-line class committed right now. So recruiting-wise, I mean, look, he's got probably 4 NFL players committed right now if they all maximize. But I think Kenny Baker is a tremendous pass rush coach. And for those that have followed this channel for a while, we've had a guy named Nathan O'Neill on here 3 times. He's an instructor he gets guys prepped for the NFL draft. He had Will Anderson. He had a lot of those guys. He's worked with Clowney, Bosa, all those guys at some point in their careers. So look, he is a tremendous pass rush guy himself. And when Kenny Baker when we kind of heard the back channel, like Kenny Baker's going to be I wasn't familiar with Kenny Baker. So I called Nathan O'Neill. I said, hey man, what are your thoughts on him? Great pass rush coach. And what is he doing, Rod? He works at the edges on pass rush too. He is the pass rush coach. Wow. So I think from a pass rush standpoint, and that's probably why he got into the NFL pretty quickly out of Western Kentucky, right? It's a pass rushers league.
Yep.
He can really coach pass rush. So I think Texas got something there. I think they're both really good coaches, and they're different styles. All these guys are different styles. They're both really good run game coaches in the defensive line. I think Kenny Baker's really good pass rush coach. Look, and these guys are young. Kenny Baker's young. He's not going to have the same way that Bo Davis does. Bo Davis has a way of just pulling it out of a kid sometimes, just when you wouldn't think he was. There's a reason Nick Saban tried to hire him 3 times, okay? Yeah. Bo Davis is a freaking good coach. But I think Kenny Baker is a really good pass rush coach, and I think they're both going to recruit really well.
If I can add to that, I spoke to Alfred Collins on Monday before the game. I said, hey, what's it been about Kenny Baker that's kind of brought you to another level? And he goes, well, one, I'm, the oldest player on the field, essentially, right? That helps. That's a big part of it, especially when you play in the trenches. But he goes, it's the technique. And that's something that Vernon Broughton mentioned in the spring. He goes, there's differences in the level and kind of that microcosm of technical tutelage that they provide in the given practices. And first step is where is it, left or right foot? Where does the hand go? What's the hand placement when you're trying to chase an outside zone? There's differences there that I think have certainly benefited the Texas Longhorns in the interior defensive line. But Alfred again said, it's the same passion and energy that shows up every single day in practice that allows for that room to kind of buy into what they're saying and selling every single day, and they know that they play a big part of this. They have big shoes to fill following what Devondre Sweat and Byron Murphy filled in last year. But for those two, Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins specifically, to buy in every single day to the energy, the passion, and the tutelage of Kenny Baker, you're setting up that room for what could be a pretty special 2 or 3 years after this. And we're seeing that again. Sadir Mitchell, we haven't seen him in about 5 weeks. For him to come in and make a pretty big stop on 3rd and 3 in the first quarter, it's little things like that. And that's encouraging more so than anything right now that Alex January, Jere Bledsoe, Aaron Bryant, all these guys are getting snaps now because they're going to be big pieces of this defense for 2025 without question.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that how certain coaches, they just have certain styles. I remember, Coach Withers, when I first came to Texas, he was our DB coach. He was all about attitude, mental toughness. That was kind of his coaching style. And then when Coach Akina came in, Coach Akina was all about the technique, the different methods, the different methods of playing DB or playing press coverage, your hand placement, your footwork. And he was big about the details. Like some coaches are just more detail oriented, and some players respond more to that, and others don't. And it sounds like some guys are responding well to the detail oriented coaching of Kingmaker.
By the way, Rick Ambergi asked about Tia Savea. I haven't heard for sure. I'm convinced they're trying to redshirt him to have him next year, though. He would have played. He wasn't hurt. He's been on the sideline, CJ. I think they're going to try to get another year out of him.
I agree. The thing is that I don't know if that was the plan coming in. I don't know because, again, you go out, you had 3 guys from the portal. You're thinking, okay, all 3 are going to be contributors this year after losing Sweat and Murphy. But right now, looking at what also could be departing after this season, it would make sense to want a veteran guy who's been around in the system that understands the teaching, the schemes, everything like that. Because Texas is going to be young. That's going to be a lot of overhaul next year. I know we're looking pretty far down the road, but that would be my assumption as well, Jerry.
Yeah. Bo's taking some heat in the chat. I will say this because I just try to be fair. Seems like LSU's D-line isn't good. They lost 3 guys to the NFL last year, and their best guy, another draft pick, got hurt in the second game of the year. I mean, you got, that's how you take Alfred Collins off this team right now.
Well, even more than that, imagine what your run defense would look like without an Anthony Hill, and you don't have a Harold Perkins running around to chase Jalen Milroe or Marcel Reed. That hurts a run defense anytime.
Yeah. This is hilarious, by the way. Ryan Nelson, we need to he wants Diego Pavia to win the case. I don't know if y'all saw that, but I don't think he'll win it, but I hope he does.
Yeah, he's suing the NCAA, basically asking for another year of eligibility because he doesn't believe JUCO years should count towards your eligibility. And you know what? He probably's got a good point there. I mean, the hell, man, it's JUCO. That's a totally different level. I'd be on board for it. I support Pavia at this point. Hey, you know what I mean? I think Pavia makes a good point there. I hope he wins his case. If he does, the coaches over there are going to be celebrating because he gets another year. They're going to be a problem next year. Yeah. Another year in that system. He's been in that system, what? It'd be like 5 years in that damn system that he's been running there since he was at New Mexico State. All right,
I don't think he'll get the year, but I hope he does for college football. He's good for it.
I'm with you. I agree with that.
Hugh Freeze is going to make sure it doesn't happen, by the way.
All right, getting back to the questions. Christo says, how much is it that Quinn is really bouncing back versus the defenses he is facing being worse? I still don't see him playing like he did at Michigan. Yeah, I mean, you could argue. I mean, I think that's just Georgia. You can just make the argument that Georgia had a great game plan dialed up for Quinn, and that Vandy did a really good job siphoning some of the really successful concepts from that Georgia game plan. I think that combined with Quinn also still having lingering issues from the injury, that would be my take. And I think he's getting healthier. We won't know until, like Jerry said, until they face A&M. A&M as a defense that the way to beat Texas is simply to put as much pressure on Quinn as possible and see how he responds, whether it be through blitzing, simulated pressures, delayed rushers, however you can do it. If you can constantly put pressure on Quinn and see if he will end up making bad decisions or how he mitigates disaster. And only A&M really can do that going forward, and also smother the quick game on the outside, because that's also key. You can't smother the quick game on the outside. It doesn't matter how much pressure you apply, because he can get rid of the ball really quickly to screens, attach screens on the outside, and then those guys go to work. Georgia did both and could do both. That's why Georgia's a bad matchup for Texas. Can A&M do both?
Right. No, A&M does not. The thing that Georgia had, Georgia has, when they put, obviously, Jalen Walker on the edge, he's one of the best edge rushers in America. And Mykel Williams has never played up to maybe the draft expectation, but when he's healthy, he's still good. He just hasn't been a productive player. But what Georgia had was they had a bunch of high 4-star and 5-star linebackers that could close the space extremely fast. Nobody else has that on Texas' schedule.
Right.
Now, Oklahoma, their backers are really good in coverage, but their offense sucked so bad it didn't matter how good their defense was. But A&M does not have the speed at linebacker. Nobody does that Georgia had as far as closing off that short game and with those angles and that speed they have. And they're big kids. When they hit you, you go down. That mitigates as well.
Oh, that they had like targeting penalties. Like Georgia hits differently too when they get there. Yeah.
But hey, look, what do we talk about? I know we got to talk about this because this is fun to talk about. SEC championship hunt. Playoff rankings will come out Tuesday. Texas is 3 in the new AP poll. One of 3 teams with 1 loss. Tennessee, A&M. Tennessee goes to Georgia this week. Tennessee can literally end Georgia's season this week. I mean, that's wild to think about, right? And who had that one on the bingo card? But then you have playoff rankings coming out, which Texas is probably going to be 3 there on Tuesday. So a lot of fun scenarios where a Georgia win over Tennessee coming up Saturday for entering pure chaos in the SEC for the SEC championship race at that point. Then everybody's going to, unless A&M and Texas both went out until they get to that game, everybody's going to take 2 losses except one team. And that's if Texas handles business and if A&M doesn't stub all their toes at Auburn. We're close to chaos if Georgia beats Tennessee Saturday.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yep. Texas controls their own fate. Just win, baby, as the late, great Al Davis would say. Dan wants to know, FSU just terminated their OC, wide receiver coach, and DC. When Kevin Wynn going to decommit is what Dan wants to know.
Dan, he's got to get back on campus, though. It's got to happen the Kentucky game if it's going to happen. Because, look, the dad did not make the official visit the first go-round, and we'll see if that happens. I will say Georgia pretty much cut Stephon Shivers last week to make room for either Wynn or Mbaktu. We'll see if they get one of those guys. The Shivers had nothing to do with Justice Terry. That's all them trying to get another big interior guy. Justice Terry's more of a 5 for them. But let's see. Kevin Wynn needs to get back to campus, though, on the 23rd. If without it, I have a hard time seeing it.
All right. Thank you for that, Jerry. Another one from you, Ryan Nelson. Jerry, who are the top Central Florida targets in the 2026 class for Texas?
That's a really good question. And I went through that, and Texas hasn't, right now in Central Florida, in that Orlando area, it's not a great year. So Texas has offered the receiver out of the Bowles school in Jacksonville, Naeem Burrows, who's a Jet, 10-6 kid. They like a D lineman, which I've never brought up, but since you asked the question, I can now. They like a D lineman, Elijah Golden out of Cardinal Mooney in Sarasota, but look, everybody thinks he's going to Notre Dame. It wouldn't shock me if they don't make a run at Calvin Russell, the 5-star receiver out of Northwestern. I think there's an NIL representation connection to a couple other players already at Texas, if that makes sense. So that could happen. And I'm not saying could happen as far as getting them, but could get them on campus. Central Florida is not maybe as talented as it has been some years early on. I'm sorry, I'm going down my list of Florida guys right now. I love Naeem Burrows, the receiver, though. So I'm not sure it's not going to come more southwest corridor of Florida next year, Jacksonville area. Texas hasn't made a move with any of the receivers at American Heritage, Brandon Bennett being the one with Diabell committed. So I'm not sure they're looking there. There's also another D lineman, Southwest Corridor, Kendall Gerville, that Texas likes out of Fort Myers, Florida, 4-star D lineman. So it looks more like it's going to be corridor. IMG has a couple offensive linemen, that Southwest corridor, Florida, and up into Jacksonville as of right now. But we'll see. Things can change. State of Florida has kids pop up all the time that are a skill kid or somebody that's really good.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate that. Oh, Gray Man's got a super chat here. Thank you, Gray Man. We appreciate that. So let's talk interior D-line starters for 2025. Who you got? You can say transfers, what they'll happen to Bledsoe, transfer watch. CJ, I'll kind of throw this one to you. Interior D-line starters for 2025. Who you got? Because, it does seem like some of the guys that's contributing heavily for Texas right now, they won't be on the 40 acres in 2025.
Right. Alfred Collins departing, Vernon Broughton departing. You won't have Jermaine Lelay, Bill Norton. So that's basically your top four. Now, who are they going to rely on in 2025? Well, I would assume one of those guys is going to be a big portal guy with a lot of experience, some guy who's played at a high level before. But I really like what Texas is doing to get Alex January some nice snaps early on this year. True freshman interior defensive linemen, you don't see them on the field too much early on in their career, and Texas has made it a point to get 97 on the field. I like that. I think he'll be a contributor next year. Aaron Bryant, very much in the same boat. We've seen him the last 2 years as someone that Texas has rotationally kind of thrown into games. I don't know what to expect right now about Dre Bledsoe. Is that a guy that can continue to add 310, 315? I just don't see it with the way that his body is kind of shaping out to be right now. But the big wild card is Sadir Mitchell. And again, to see him on the field this past weekend after several games where he didn't suit up, he didn't travel, he wasn't a big part of this rotational interior defensive line, to see him on the field and making plays early in the game, right? It wasn't blowout. It wasn't garbage time. He was in there in the first quarter. That's encouraging. Will he be around? Will he find the work, the body reshape, reformation? Will that be a big part of his offseason? Because if so, you don't have another guy that's 350 pounds on the roster right now that will be here in 2025, and he will fill big needs for this defensive line in 2025 is if he's able to put in the work, check the boxes, and stick around for next season. Right now, I would see him and Alex January kind of being the two guys Texas relies on, as well as Tia Savea, someone that we just mentioned earlier, might be hanging around as a redshirt candidate for 2025.
And I can say during this season in redshirt year, Texas thinks Melvin Hills can be a pretty good rotational player. He's up about 310, looks good physically, has that want to, has that motor. So I think he can be a pretty good rotational player for them as long as he keeps on the path he's on. Yeah, with Dre Bledsoe, my stance on him hadn't changed. This needed to be the year. If he was going to make a move, there was going to be opportunity, right? There was some snaps. There was opportunity. It just hadn't happened for him. So me personally, it's not like I know 100%. I'll be surprised if he's back. No, me personally. He needs to go get on the field. It's not happening in Texas. By the way, I want to mention this. There's been some Jonte Cook. People throwing out Oregon, Georgia, SMU, a couple other schools in the chat for Jonte. I do have a little update on that. I don't think it's going to be Oregon. It ain't going to be Georgia. I'm not sure he has the same stock he had coming out of high school right now. I'll say that. It'll be something to follow where he ends up.
Interesting. Yeah. I know a lot of Longhorn fans are they're intrigued. They want to know exactly where Jonte is going to end up. Wishing him the best, though. By the way, I want to say that straight up. Wishing Jonte the best.
Go get it, man. Go get it.
He's got a ton of talent. I mean, tremendous upside. Cisco, thank you for the question, Cisco. Appreciate it. Rod B, how great was it to see the pony package? We needed more. Yeah, we did see it. We saw it early on in the game too. We didn't see it. I don't think we saw it at all in the second half. It was just in the first half, and it was very strategic, which means it was in like Sark's script. So I'm going to go back and look when we see the pony package this season. Seemed like it's been in the script. Like we don't see it outside of the script very often. And remember, right after they got the fourth down conversion early on in the first half, which we got to talk about a little bit more too, because that was, I don't know if we've got a play that shows more testicular fortitude from Sark than that play, guys. I mean, that was deep in your own territory, and you're going for it, and you put a freshman out there who doesn't even play to be the guy that converts it. That's the second time he's done that. He did it against Georgia too. He ran an in and around with Ryan Wingo. Like, damn, that's a lot of trust in a freshman. I'm all about it, but that's good for Sark. It shows you, man. He shows you it's a ballsy moment for him. I'll just say that.
Hey, one thing that would not have been on your offensive bingo card to start the year is Jarrett Gibson, fullback buck. Fullback trap. I mean, that's not what you would have had on the card to start the season. So, again,
no doubt. Yeah, and I wonder,
maximizing what you have.
Yeah, speaking of the pony package, I wonder if now, I don't know, if Jarrett Gibson is indeed gaining some of the trust of the coaches. I know he did fumble in the game too, so maybe he's gaining some of the trust of the coaches. But if you add him to the pony package, he's a different element because he's a downhill runner. They don't really have that in the pony package right now, which is why the run game in the pony package is suffering. Like the run game numbers are terrible. They're they're mediocre, below average. But the passing numbers are superb, like they've been every year in the pony package. But usually when you got a Jonathan Brooks or a CJ Baxter or a Bijan or a Rojo, the rushing numbers as well as the passing numbers are among the best in any personnel grouping in the pony package. But this year, it's specifically, you're averaging, I think, almost 11 yards per attempt, a little under that in passing numbers in the pony package. So it's great. But like I said, the rushing numbers, the only thing that beefs up the rushing numbers was the 44-yard run from Isaiah Bond, and that's the end of the round. Only if you consider Ryan Niblett to be a tailback or a running back in that situation and not a wide receiver. And if he is, then it's in 21 personnel and not 11 personnel. But that's way too much nerd talk. Thank you very much, Cisco, for the question, and we appreciate that. All right, getting back to Todd here. Todd says, never apologize for blowing out an opponent. Pre-Sark, Texas struggled occasionally against bad opponents. Not anymore. Is this the case for you, CJ? You think that now Texas is done playing with its food? That now when Texas no longer plays to its opponent. They don't play to the level of their opponent. That now, are they playing more to the standard, do you think, in your opinion?
I think they're certainly inching closer to that, right? That was a good game from Texas. It was 35-0 at halftime, right? In Florida, again, they have talent. We've seen that this year where Texas hasn't necessarily played its best football games, but you're beating Oklahoma by 30. You're beating Mississippi State by 24, whatever it was. You're beating Michigan on the road by 20, where it was a 28, 27-point game late in that ball game, right? Those are all sizable wins when you're not playing necessarily your best style. There wasn't too long ago where I was a student making my walk from West Campus to go watch Texas my first year here in Austin, and I'm watching Texas beat San Jose State by 7, and I'm sitting there thinking, what is going on here? I know that was a long time ago, but that kind of stuck around for the last 4 or 5 years before Texas really started to piece together these, strong, consistent teams. So it's encouraging in the sense that, again, Texas played a good game. In a good game, you win by 32. It's 49 points on the board. You probably could have had more if you don't have a fumble at midfield, right? That's encouraging. That's a good team. Can you do that again? And when you don't play your best football game, but you play other good teams, can you continue to win that? That's when you know you've made the leap. Right now, Texas is on the verge. They didn't play a good game against Georgia. Georgia's a good team. What can you do if you don't play a good game against Texas A&M on the road and still find a way to win that football game? That remains to be kind of the question mark that I have to get to that elite tier. But I think they're knocking on the door right now.
Hey, CJ, is the line of the Arkansas game, what, it was 17, 16 and a half?
16 and a half, yeah.
Yep.
Hey, so here's I think Texas has one more shot at a blowout, and I'm not saying it's going to be 32 or 35-point win, but I just want to read Kentucky's last 3 games. They lost 48-20 to Florida. Now, that was DJ Lagway, Florida, okay? But that was, Montrell Johnson didn't play. They still had some injuries, not as banged up as they were against Texas, though. Then it's time to hold your nose. Kentucky lost to Auburn 24-10. I mean, wow. They lost to Auburn 24-10. And then Tennessee got them 28-18. So the last 3 games, they lost by double digits, and Tennessee is struggling on offense. Nico is not playing high-level football now. He got hurt the other night. So Texas does have another shot to have a big win, I think, because Kentucky can't keep up with Texas offensively, even though they got some good defensive players.
And that's where I am with Texas. Texas plays bad quarterbacks. They beat the hell out of them. We've seen that all season long.
Agreed.
Now, and this is the question I was going to ask you guys. Taylon Green, where does he stack up from a difficulty as a defender, someone that you got to scheme against, run, leg, pass, whatever it is? Where does he stack up against opposing quarterbacks Texas has played this year? Is he number 2? Is he behind Diego Pavia? Is he behind Carson Beck? I think right now he's going to be in that top tier of opposing quarterbacks Texas has played so far this year.
He's interesting because he's not going to be 100% healthy, because they keep running him up the middle on quarterback counter, and he's 6'6", 195, and people are smoking his kneecaps. Beck's been just playing bad football. And now he's blaming Mike Bobo, which is hilarious in a press conference, essentially, without saying it, as he got this 12th interception of the SEC. Yeah, that's a good question. Diego, for sure. I mean, if you put Diego on a really talented team, he'd be scary. He'd be scary because he's just such a tough playmaker. I mean, that's a good point, CJ. I mean, because the first few games there weren't one at all. Right. I mean, Michigan's been through more quarterbacks than a high school JV team at this point. So yeah, I mean, he's not an accurate passer, but I think in terms of defending a guy, he might be number 2.
Yeah. I was thinking that earlier today because, again, Taylor Green's really, really good. I think he's a fun football player. He's a scrappy football player. He's a guy who had to earn and kind of work to get to where he is today, obviously, in the SEC. As a result, he plays with that chip, but he's got the talented traits where you can say, oh, yeah, he belongs. With that said, combine the two, there hasn't been a whole lot of quarterback talent that Texas has faced. And again, to the point of, well, when you play bad teams and you beat the hell out of them and you kind of make it a point to, the distance on the scoreboard and the box score look embarrassing, you're doing your job. But what does that mean if you're Texas and you finally play a Taylor Green level of guy? I think Marcel Reed kind of is in that same category. What does that look like defensively when you're truly tested again on the road? We'll see this Saturday.
Yeah, I think when Texas when they have a clear identity, we talked about this earlier in the season, and then we kind of got away from it because we basically got tired of praising the defense and how good they were because they got boring, but they just been that good all season long. When Texas defense is a clear identity to take away, I think they're really good at that, and I think that's what's going to help them in the Arkansas game. They know you got to take away the Arkansas run game and force Taylor to beat you as a pocket passing quarterback, and if he can do that, then you got to give him his kudos. And I don't know if he can against this Texas defense. MJF says, in hindsight now, do we know why we hadn't seen Gibson much over the prior 3 games? We speculated it was his ankle, pass protection, doghouse.
Not doghouse.
Yeah, not dog. What do you thoughts, Jerry, about this? I mean, he was great at the end of the game. Do they trust him now? Just bring it up in the pony package. He'd be great to see in that. Do they trust him now to use in critical moments, not just to close out a game when the thing is already decided?
I think you saw it Saturday. There's 2 things: is ball protection and pass protection. And you saw the fumble Saturday. And look, I mean, there's sometimes somebody makes a really good play on you, and there's sometimes you don't have great ball protection, right? But I think that's, especially for a back, Rod, as you play against these guys, that they're just going to, especially young backs, just going to drop their shoulder and try to run through you. You got to have great ball protection because you're bringing on multiple guys contacting you, and there's a lot of helmets and arms flying at that football and elbows flying at that football. So, especially for a guy that's going to play between the tackles and try to lower the boom on you, you got to be really strong in the ball protection part of it. But I'll say this for Jarrett. I said it during our watch with us. I was so happy for the kid. I think we all saw the emotion when he scored against Florida and how important that was to him. He grew up in Gainesville. His dad's one of the biggest Florida fans you'll ever meet in your life. He was committed to Florida. And when Billy Napier came in, they kind of messed that recruitment up. They didn't give him any attention, and he decommitted. That was personal for that kid Saturday. Even though he had the fumble, have his first 100-yard game, get in the end zone against Florida, you could tell how much that meant to him. So I was happy for him Saturday.
And like you said, Sark knew how much it meant to him.
No doubt.
Yeah, because he was excited about it. It really should have been. It's clear that Sark knows, and we all know, he's your best downhill runner. Because he put him in on the 4th and 1 in his own damn territory. He didn't put in Jaden Blue. He didn't put in Trey White. We need to go downhill and get this 1 yard. This is my guy, Baby Rhino. So he knows that, but it's some other things keeping him from putting in men, obviously, in critical moments, and we got to trust Sark on that.
Hey, Ski Break said Gibson had 100 yards. I think CJ had 101. It kind of crept up on that late run, didn't it?
Yeah, no, you said the same thing. I saw Ski Break's comment, and I looked at, I have the box score over on my other monitor here, 16 for 100. And I'm sitting there thinking, I thought the exact same thing. I was like, whoa, he did eclipse 100. What is that? The second time this year, I believe, that he's hit 100 yards on the ground and 16 carries. I think also
so that means he had 98 in the 4th quarter then.
Pretty much, because
or like 85 of them in the 4th quarter.
Damn.
But again, to Gibson, and what's encouraging for him moving forward is the 4th and 1 touch on your own 25, 30-yard line, whatever it was. Yeah. You don't get the trust of the coaching staff as a true freshman unless they see something in you. They value you in some sort of aspect, and obviously that's the short distance. To contain to continue that trust, you got to hold on to the football And that's something I think right now it's kind of getting away from him. Well, the entire running back room as well, if that's the one critique I could find. But one thing I also wanted to mention, and we've seen this a few times now, the level of enjoyment, enthusiasm, the sideline has when youngsters make plays. We saw it earlier this year when Ryan Niblett found the end zone in a blowout win earlier this year, and the whole sideline kind of erupts, and they kind of storm the field to go celebrate with them. This past weekend, it was Ty Anthony Smith, and that interception that he had in the second quarter, it took the Texas defense and the guys off the bench. It took them probably a minute and a half, 2 minutes to get off the field from their celebration. The offense is ready to snap the football, and they got guys still celebrating, kind of patting each other on the back. But it's stuff like that with the young kids that are still kind of working in to find their own reps and snaps and their own share of this defense and offense, whatever. But that's cool. I think that's something that needs to be shouted out and celebrated because it's hadn't always been the case. I'll say that.
I agree with you, CJ. Great point there, and I'll add to it. I'm glad that we're just seeing more celebrations, period. And some people, old school people, don't like it, and I get it. But I was a player, and we planned for success, so we planned on celebrating. You're like, no, we gonna score. And we about to make, we're gonna make some plays, and when we make plays, this will be a celebration. And you'll notice that Florida game, I thought I saw more celebrations than I've seen in a long time. Individual ones with the O-line and Quinn, and then tap that in. And so everybody had little individual celebrations. I know some people don't like it; they don't think it's classy, and I get it. But to me, I remember last year, I remember saying the guys don't have enough celebrations. Celebrations mean you're gonna ball out.
It's almost like they went to yeah. It's almost like they went to the movies Friday and shared popcorn and Skittles and just held hands. I mean, it was good to see, man. Hey, look, you got to be. I like that guys were happy for Sadir Mitchell in that game. Brian Bird pointed that out. Yeah, I mean, look, guys cheering for teammates is good culture. By the way, I want to hit on this. One of the craziest things that's ever happened in college sports happened on Friday. Rod, I don't know if you guys saw this. Auburn's basketball team was on a chartered flight. Was on a chartered flight to Houston to play the University of Houston at Toyota Center last night.
Yeah.
A fight broke out between the players on the plane. 45 minutes into it, they had to turn the thing around and go back to Auburn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
And so you think, oh my God, they're going to go to Houston and Kelvin Sampson's going to beat the hell out of them. Nope. Auburn won the game. Go back home now.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Chemistry,
man.
man.
A fight on the plane, turn the plane around. Now we'll fly out later that night, get into Houston Friday night, still beat Houston, turn around and fly home. One of the wildest things you'll see in college athletics.
It happens like that, man. It's like that couple that argues all the time, and yet they're still together. And the couple that you thought was a perfect couple, they're divorced already. It's like, what's going on? It's like, hey, man, you never can tell. Chemistry is chemistry. Nobody can really quantify what's going on there. That's a great story there, Jerry. Jose says, Jerry, Rod, do you guys notice that when Quinn is on, he really fires the ball into his receivers, and when he's off, he's always leaning back? I feel like that's an easy tell if he's confident or not. Jerry, I feel like you've talked about footwork a ton with Quinn, and when his footwork, when he's active in the pocket and his footwork actually is on point, that's when he's at his best. And when his feet are lazy, that's when he's at his worst. And is that what he's talking about here, Jose?
Well, that's my thing with Quinn, right? And we want to see all these guys go succeed. So I don't want people think I'm hater. I'm just talking here. When he has issues is when the walls close in fast and his feet freeze. When he doesn't make athletic moves in the pocket. And look, he's not a hellacious athlete with lateral quickness or those things, right? And I say this, and I'm serious. Jump rope, boxing workouts, mini trampoline, go play tennis. I mean, he's going to have to maximize that part of his game, especially at the next level, because every week's Georgia in the NFL. But for the college game, I mean, that's when you see him struggle. Is in against Michigan. Now, Michigan, the walls didn't close in as fast as Georgia did on him. Yeah. But in Michigan, though, he was still climbing the pocket a little quicker and buying himself time, keeping his feet moving a little better. Whenever he gets into that mode where the feet kind of stop, he's dead in the water now. And any quarterback's dead in the water in that scenario. Feet have to keep moving. under duress.
Yep, you're like a shark, man. Stop moving, you die. Your feet stop moving, the play is dead.
Dead.
That one. How about this one? The coach, he says, if Arkansas defenders are that good, how come they got blown out by Ole Miss? I don't know if anybody's saying Arkansas has great defenders. Just that I think Arkansas's run game, might be formidable. I think that Jerry and CJ both said that Arkansas is going to have a tough time trying to stop Texas. I think we all agree with that. How about this one coming up from Bobby? At Bobby_Batronic says, who ends the season with more interceptions? Carson Beck on the Texas defense.
Tough call.
14 right now. Carson Beck has 12, I believe.
Yeah, tough call. I mean, because Tennessee's coming to town and they're pretty good on defense.
Man.
But you have UMass after that and then Georgia Tech. So I'll say the Texas defense, but it could be close.
I like that. That's a fun question.
That's all. That's all. And it all come in SEC play, right? He had none. He didn't have any prior to SEC play, and then the last 6 games, he's got 12 interceptions. How about this one from Todd Lacey? Who is the catalyst on offense, defense, and special teams? Mine are Bond, Barron, and Bowden. Bowden is showing himself to be a pretty good punt returner. How about this one for you, CJ? Who are the catalysts on offense, defense, and special teams, in your opinion?
That is interesting. Anthony Hill for me defensively is the guy I'll go with. Special teams, I like Matthew Golden, but Bolden's probably the safe answer, right? Again, it's only a matter of time before he truly gets loose in the punt return game. He's been close all season long. He had another really good return that got Texas north of the 50-yard line to start a possession offensively. I actually like Gunnar Helm. I think that's a solid.
That's good. That's good.
Just kind of the piece that ties together the run and the pass game. Someone that is on the field every single snap in a key position. He's been really good this year as well. Made himself a ton of money for the NFL as well. I like Gunnar Helm.
Honestly, CJ, that is it. I know people don't want to. It's really tough to fathom because you look at all the weapons on offense and how lethal and explosive they all are. Guys, the most explosive pass catcher for Texas right now is Gunnar freaking Helm. He's got more 20-plus yard receptions than any of the other pass catchers for Texas. And by the way, as CJ has talked about, they aren't all coming the same way. Sometimes he's mossing some DBs, and sometimes he's getting yards after the catch and hurdling some defenders. They come in different ways. Honestly, CJ, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think the catalyst for the offense is actually Gunnar freaking Helm. And it's crazy to say that, but I think you're right because they're a pass-first offense. And he actually is and Sarkis said, the second most important position behind quarterback. Yeah. But I'm with you. I feel like he's the one player, no matter what the situation or personnel grouping, he's an asset. And he's kind of the guy that they must have on the field in any situation, no matter what it is.
I agree.
I don't disagree with that. And Sark's almost said it. Right, Rod said, I'm going to make a little bit of a prediction here. If Nick Townsend plays tight end at Texas in this offense under Sark, he may be about as good as we've seen at Texas. He may be the best we've seen at Texas at that position.
I love that.
Well, just because Sark's so good at weaponizing him, right? I mean, because the truth is Gunnar better than JT Sanders was right now at tight end.
Yes.
Exactly. I didn't think that. CJ, you just thought about it. You're like, well,
I wouldn't have said that going into the year, but yeah,
I agree.
I wouldn't even utter those words. That's disrespectful. And I'm like, I think he is actually.
JT better, maybe a little better in the open field, making more guys miss. Gunner's good at making one guy miss and maximizing. JT, but I think Gunner's a more willing blocker,
and that's where Nick Townsend trumps all of them.
Oh, he's a physical dude.
He's going to be the most physical guy in Texas in 20 years.
Oh. Okay, MJF. I don't know who called it the nightmare on Helm Street. Make the t-shirts right now. Damn right. Okay, that's beautiful. That is that. Honestly, somebody needs to pump that out. I need Craig Way. I'll text Craig Way that. I'll text him this week. I'm going to text Craig Way. We're going to try to get that on the broadcast of the next game. Next time Gunnar Helm catches a touchdown, we will get Craig Way to utter the words "nightmare on Helm Street." That's our goal. We'll get it done. Thank you guys for that. Beautiful.
Ryan, by the way, Ryan Nelson brought up something I need to hit on. I don't want to diss on Jordan Washington. He's going to be he could be a pro too. Nick Townsend is a very rare type of athlete.
Guys, they might. Okay, I know Michael Terry wants to play receiver, but what if he commits? If he commits to Texas, they would have like 3 of those types of guys, and you can end up moving him to tight end or be. He can be your athlete, H back, whatever, wide receiver. He can be everything. You have like 3 freak hybrid athletes on campus to play that position. That'd be wild. That'd be wild. Okay, I know we're getting closer to the end of the live stream, so let me thank our sponsor here before we continue. Rogue Shop, our friends at rogueshop.com. Rogue Shop bringing real plant medicine back to its roots. Rogue Shop ships nationwide, folks, so make sure that you check them out at rogueshop.com. You can get any of their fantastic items shipped to you anywhere in the country. Use the code ONTexas, and you'll get a very special discount from our very special friends over at rogueshop.com. Rogue Shop has it all, from oils and creams to flour and gummies. Again, that's rogueshop.com. Use the code ONTexas. You'll get that very special discount from our friends over at Rogue Shop, and we appreciate them for sponsoring our Sunday night live stream. We appreciate them very much. All right, Rick has a question there. We're getting closer. We'll take a couple of more questions before we end our live stream tonight. Rick says, given Texas is not going to pound the rock early, should Sark and / Flood go with Hudson over Campbell? Campbell has recurring problems switching off in pass pro. That's interesting. What are your thoughts on that, CJ?
It is interesting. I know that there's some conversation on Texas football this past weekend about the right guard spot. And again, that first sack, and it kind of lingers over some of the issues that we've seen earlier this year in pass protection on the right side is communication, eyes, kind of that discipline of finding your keys, knowing when to switch off on guys. I'll have to go back and watch this past weekend because, again, I didn't think necessarily there was a lot of pressure on Quinn. I don't know if that was because of the right guard or that entire right side or whatnot. But, again, if you can find a more consistent player, I thought DJ had been more consistent this season in their given time on the field. But we'll see. And, again, you got to go with the hot hand whenever given the opportunity to upgrade and be at maximum level offensively. But right now I think DJ kind of, at least recently, has been the more consistent piece for the Texas offense.
By the way, somebody mentioned Amari Winston. Amari Winston, the other tight end commit in this class, very similar to Davis for me.
Yeah, I feel like Sark, because you talked about it too, CJ, about Sark leaning more on 12 personnel this season in some critical moments in critical situations. Maybe that's because the running back injuries, whatever. Sark has talked about tight end being the second most important position in his offense behind tight end. You've seen now back-to-back years him being able to revitalize the tight end position from being a dangerous species on the 40 acres. Now you're going to have back-to-back mid-round picks at the tight end position in JT Sanders and Gunnar Helm. And then now looking at that recruiting class, depending on how it ends up with all the tight ends, I'm with you guys, man. I feel like Sark's cooking something up for the reinvention of the offense in the SEC. I feel like something's afoot here. We'll break it down, of course. We'll have it here at On Texas Football. All right, Jeff has a super chat here before we get done tonight. Jeff, thank you very much for the super chat. Says, who would have thought that our schedule was so weak in August? I thought we had a tough schedule. The committee going with the eye test over resume. What are you guys' thoughts about Texas schedule? And like the strength of schedule argument now is becoming more and more prevalent, right? Strength of schedule. Does it matter for Texas if they just keep winning? Do they not have to worry about the strength of schedule? It pretty much takes care of itself.
I think so, but a little bit of that has to be in the fashion in which you win, And again, going back, listen, I've used the same argument for Indiana, who doesn't have a ranked win. They don't have a win over someone who received a vote in the AP poll. They're beating everybody, with the exception of Michigan this past weekend. They're beating everybody by 30. If they're blowing out everybody, and Texas has done that early in the year, they're doing it right now against Florida. If you go into Arkansas again, you win by 25 or 30. What's the argument to say the eye test doesn't favor the Longhorns with the exception of the Georgia game? The team that's rolling the hardest, kind of finding that rhythm later in the year, that's going to mean something. And I think that's going to help the Longhorns. When you look at it holistically, it's not the toughest schedule. But again, you go on the road, you get a ranked win against Vanderbilt. You beat opponent Oklahoma on a neutral site by 30. You go on the road to Michigan, you win by 20. And then all the wins in between. Not many of them have been quote-unquote upset scares. And that's something I think you have to take into account.
So this is a good time to mention how bad OU sucks. Rod, is it 8:30?
It is 8:30. Yes, sir.
Look, among their suckage this year, Texas is the only team to beat them by 30.
Ooh.
Now, South Carolina got them by 26, but that Texas is the only team that's beat them by 30 this year. Now, we'll see. By the way, this is also a good time to say Oklahoma's done winning this year. That Saturday was their last shot. They get a week off to think about everything, which ought to be a great Brent Venables press conference. Then they have Alabama at home and at LSU, so they will go 5-7 this year. In year 3 for Venables.
Yeah, that's gonna put you on the hot seat if you're not already on the hot seat there at Oklahoma. All right. Thank you guys for all the questions and the super chats. Really appreciate it. I know we couldn't get to all the questions. We missed a few of them, but if you have any more, please direct those to the gentleman because Jerry will be a part of it over at Coffee and Football at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. We'll get started early here on the On Texas Football YouTube channel. And also, I'll be joining my man CJ Vogel and Coach Bob Shipley for the winning drive, along with Lifetime Longhorns Stevie Lee, who's going to join us for a little while to talk about the Texas Longhorns. That'll be at 3:15 tomorrow. Thank you very much to the Rogue Shop for sponsoring the winning drive. Sponsoring tonight's live stream. There's approximately 86,400 moments to notice that OU sucks in a given day. Very, very well done there, Bobby. We appreciate that. You're right about that, no doubt. No matter what time it is, OU still sucks. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes because Matthew's always great. He's a real MVP. Appreciate you, Matthew. And thank you to all you guys. Thanks for the super chats. Thanks for all the questions as well. Keep it tuned here and keep it locked into On Texas Football for all things related to Texas football. For Jerry Hamilton and for my man CJ Vogel, I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, hook 'em horns.